What are you doing? All right, so this is a 2014 Chrysler Town Country minivan. It's in here. I'm doing a brake job, oil change, and I'm now going to be replacing the front struts. Whenever you're looking at a vehicle and you see all this grime, all this gooey, crappy stuff, that's a result of the oil of the strut. You can see right there it's wet. The oil's leaking out of the strut, and this is just road grime, dirt, whatever, just clinging to that oil. Real good indication that this strut has failed. So we're going to do, they both look like this. We're going to do both the struts. Just going to hit some of the important stuff with a little bit of penetrating oil, make things a little bit easier. I did also sell new sway bar links. So instead of, there is a provision in the, you can't see this, but there is a provision for a Torx in the end of this to take that nut off. I'm just going to cut them with the torch down here, leave this attached to the strut because we're going to put new ones on because they're worn loose also. You don't have to take the brakes off to do this, but I'm going to because that's what it was here for. If you are doing the brakes, these are 13 millimeter. And then these bracket bolts are actually 21 millimeter. Look how thin that is. There's nothing left. It's metal to metal right up here. It's paper thin. I'd say they got their money's worth out of those pads. Don't hit your rotor unless you're replacing it. Jeez Louise. I'm winning. Okay, with that out of the way, there's a little bolt back here. It's got a 10 millimeter head on it. And that secures the bracket for the ABS wire to the strut. We're going to pull that off. I'm out of breath. Okay. That just slides off there. Okay, I'm going to pull this nut loose. You don't really have to, but I'm just going to pull this nut loose and get the end of the CV shaft loose inside that hub, because when I take these two bolts out right here and separate the strut from the steering knuckle, the knuckle's kind of going to want to lean out this way, and there's a chance you could hyperextend the CV joint. What is that? 32 millimeter on that. Okay, it's loose. All right, there's two bolts that pinch the steering knuckle to the strut. They're 21 millimeter. You can normally take them out without putting a wrench on the backside, because there's a raised collar on the inside of this bolt that actually makes it get stuck into place where it's at. And you'll see that the ends of these bolt extends just a little bit. It gives you a little bit of tappy tap room. And if you're not comfortable tapping it with a hammer, you can put the nut back on a few threads and hit that with the hammer. So I'm going to push that in and let this thing relax. It's going to come forward a little bit. You want to make sure that that ABS wire isn't stretched. Okay, so with all that unhooked, next I'm going to disconnect this sway bar link, and they can be a bugger to disconnect after they look like this. They've been on the car for years in the elements. We're putting new ones on because these ones are loose, so I'm just going to cut the nut off the backside with a torch. I've been doing this for, I don't even know, 20 some years. I've never had a problem. Cut the backside off with a torch. I'm going to leave the top side connected to the strut because we're going to throw all that away. Now, if you're not proficient using torches, don't do this. Don't even try this if this is your first time. And I like to keep a fire extinguisher, my water bottle. I do have a fire extinguisher, but I hang this on my torches, and it's great for cooling things down, putting out little fires. But don't try this if you're not proficient with torches. Guess I should turn the tanks on. So that's a lot faster than the alternative. And just to show you guys, I didn't cut all the way through, so I did not damage the, let me unzoom this guy here. I didn't cut all the way through, so I didn't damage the end of the sway bar. You can see there's the inside edge of the nut. Once you hack through it with the torch and that sucker's red hot, if you go on this side of the sway bar and beat on that link with a hammer, a lot of times that'll pop right off, and that's what you saw happen right there. Okay, moving on. Okay, we've done everything on the bottom of the car, and now we need to access the top of these strut towers to get at the three nuts that are holding the top of the strut in. So what we need to do, you can see You can see this little black plastic cap. Just pop that off of the screwdriver. This one's already missing, so we'll start with this one. The nuts that hold the wiper arm to the pivot are 15 millimeter. Okay. Now sometimes you can just jostle this around and you can get that to break loose. But that's not going to be the case. So what I do, I put that nut back on there, a few threads. I'm just going to rattle it a little bit with the air hammer while I lift up on this part of the... There it is. Putting the nut back on there kind of protects the threads. And just that little bit of shock broke that taper loose, so this will come off now. Well, it was loose. There we go. You can put it's important to know where your windshield wipers go on the glass. If you're not comfortable, or if your windshield's completely clean, just throw a piece of tape up there. But I've never run into a windshield that's completely clean. There's always a witness mark of where the wiper came to rest. That's important for when you're putting it back together. They do sell a little wiper arm puller. I do have one. I don't know where it's at. I don't use it enough to know where it's at. But it works good. I mean, you can use it on stuck battery terminals too. Or you could even just use a hammer. Just bear in mind the windshield's right there. Before I had my air chisel, I used to use a hammer, but that's dangerous. Let's see if we can get this one loose. Yep. It doesn't take much. Okay, with the wipers out of the way, there's little plastic clips that go along. Yeah, looks like there's only two on this one. One here and one at the other end. We'll pull those out. I think a regular old trim tool will work. It is a Phillips head, but I haven't had good luck taking these apart with a screwdriver. Suppose I could try. For the sake of making a video, I'll be nice. It'll probably work because I'm making a video too. Oh yeah, look, it is working. If it doesn't work, just pry them out of there. You're not going to hurt anything. They're just plastic. And literally, when you put them back together, you don't even have to screw them back together. You put this in the hole, then you just jam that top piece down and it locks that panel into place. Okay, I should be able to move this now. There we go. And we don't have to take, there's our nuts right there. We don't have to take anything else off. This will work. Okay, so I've just taken a chunk of 2x4 and I just propped up that plastic piece. And then back here you can see the 1, 2, the 3 different nuts. Those are the nuts that support the top of the strut. Zoom in a little bit here. The driver's side is just slightly tricky. I mean, you don't have real good access to this back nut, just use a wrench. These two you can use a socket on. The passenger side, with this propped up out of the way, there's absolutely nothing in the way. So let's So these, you'll want to do this back one first, just because that's going to be the one. Oh, I got the wrong size wrench on here. That's going to be the one that's hard to, well, not hard, but it's the most difficult nut to access. So take that one off first, because once you take these other two off, then the strut's going to want to drop, and then you'll have the weight of the strut fighting you. I'll let that hang on a couple threads here so the strut doesn't fall down until I can catch it. Okay, that's the last nut. It's always a good idea to do a quick parts comparison and make sure they're right. We're using Monroe quick struts. Even came with new nuts for the top. And they are different. Well, they are, the part numbers are specific for left and right. But to me, the struts look like they'd go either way, because they've got provisions for the sway bar link on either side, as well as a speed sensor link. But nonetheless, this is the one for the left side, so we're going to throw it in. So I just put those on a few threads each, just enough to hang the strut, but it's still loose. And you want it that way. It makes it easier to line everything else up. You don't actually want to tighten those 3 nuts down until everything's back together and the weight of the vehicle is pushing that strut up into its seat. Okay, so I got the car back up in the air. The top, the nuts are still loose so that there's wiggle room on the strut. But something worth mentioning before I put this together is, see the lower hole? The upper hole is round and the lower hole is slotted. And when you look at the old strut, you'll see that the 2 holes are the same. The reason for the slotted new strut is to allow for camber adjustments on this right here. So after these struts are installed, this vehicle is going to have to go to the alignment shop, and then they're going to use that right there to adjust the camber. So just a little something worth noting. Okay, make sure that your ABS wire is on the correct side, that you don't have it, you didn't put the strut in with it on the wrong side. Just kind of wiggle this around. If this doesn't line up, you can actually spin this. The bearing plate up there will allow it to spin, so get her lined up. Maybe. Usually once you get one bolt started in there, you can kind of wiggle it around and get the hole lined up for the other one. You can see the knurled edge on here, and that's what was holding the bolts in after I spun the nuts out. So sometimes it helps to take a hammer and just give them a little tap to get that seated. You don't have to though. Oh, that was torque to factory specs, by the way. By tapping those in to seat those knurled ends, I didn't have to use a wrench to hold it, but you can use a wrench. All right, let me go. So I'm putting new sway bar links on, Moog brand, which used to be a good brand, and now it's a so-so brand. What's nice about it is they have grease fittings. What's not nice about it is no one's ever going to grease that. Let's be honest. So the nuts, and this goes for the old ones too, the nuts are 18 millimeter, and they have these little flat spots. See, these ones don't have the provision in the end for the Torx. You can go behind it and hold it with an 18 to tighten it down. This top one you can get with an impact gun. You can't on the bottom. We're going to tighten this to factory spec. And we'll tighten the bottom one up with a clicker wrench. Okay. The last thing we got to do is we got to install our little bolt with the 10 millimeter head, and that holds the speed sensor wire on the back side here. So we'll slide this guy back into place. Just like that. I'm gonna put a little something on this. I just put a little dab of anti-seize on there, so the next guy will appreciate that. Hopefully it's me. We'll just snug that up. Don't crank it down tight. Okay, and then our final step here, we're gonna torque this to factory specs. Now I joke a lot about torquing stuff to spec and you don't see me using the torque wrench. That's because those torque specs aren't as crucial as something like this is. So something like this right here, we're gonna actually torque it to spec. $180 foot-pounds. Okay, so the brakes and everything are put back together. The tires are on. The vehicle is sitting on its own weight again. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten these up. All right, we can take our block of wood out and get our plastic piece back into position here. There's little hooks on here that hook into the bottom of the windshield. Stop in here. Then these little plastic clips, like I said before, all you got to do is push them down in there with your thumb, and it locks them just like that. And then we want to put our windshield wipers back on and line them up to the corresponding dirt lines on the windshield. Replacing struts on a Chrysler Town Country is pretty easy, isn't it? If this video helped you out or you liked it, give me a thumbs up. Check out my other content. I appreciate the support. Thank you.